So my name is Elijah Insua. I work for ARC90, and we're located in New York City. Today I'll be talking to you about why Node has a DOM. I think this is important that I explain this. There's a lot of jaywalking and buses and taxis in New York, and if I get hit by any of these, I think it's important that you guys know what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish here. So the first thing that I think is important, and I get asked this all the time, what is a DOM, right? So the W3C in its infinite wisdom defines it as the document object model, or DOM, is a platform and language neutral interface that will allow programs and scripts to dynamically access and update the content, structure, and style of documents. I mean, that's great. But I'm still confused, right? So when I think of the DOM, my mind immediately goes to, a browser. So this is the Node.js homepage, and the image here is the result of markup being turned into a DOM, being styled, being run through a reflow-like engine, and then being rendered to an image. So, as an example, here's some markup. It's the TOC, like the links, the navigation on the left hand of the page. And when the browser retrieves these, or when it retrieves the HTML, it sends it to a parser. The parser is kind of like a assembly line. It takes raw material, or markup in this case, and it turns it into usable components, which we know as a tree of DOM nodes. By the way, these are F22s, and they're awesome.
Hey, I think we're going to get started now.
OK, so after they get turned into a DOM tree, as you can see up here, I've used a tool. I don't know if you can see that. I used a tool called HTML graph to graph the markup on the Node homepage. It's kind of interesting to see this whole tree visualized, but the purpose of this is to show that the navigation, the div, the purple node that the orange arrow is pointing to, is actually like parenting this whole hand-looking thing, which is an OL, a bunch of LIs, and a bunch of links. So why is this valuable? What is the purpose of this? Basically, there's no more text manipulation. You can treat documents as a tree, and you don't have to, regex things and you can use it programmatically as opposed to hacking around. Manipulation is easier because we now have the tools to, traverse the structure, manipulating nodes, moving them, changing them, whatever you want to do. So this is also good because it's a common paradigm. The DOM is everywhere. It's in server-side languages or server-side platforms, browsers. I mean, it's one of the most common paradigms around. I mean, it's just a tree and some functionality to manipulate, the nodes. So I'd like now to dive into some of the implementations on server-sided platforms and see how they work. So basically, every server-sided platform has at least one DOM. There are many problems with these, though. A lot of them, actually all of them, you can't execute JavaScript, and we all love JavaScript. So the question is, what would you use these things for? And in general, it's a lot of XML processing. XML manipulation, there's XML RPC, SOAP, XPath, XSLT, and these are a lot of short-lived DOMs, right? They're not meant to live longer than the time that it takes to make a request. There's no window. There's no events. So even if you had a long-running DOM, you couldn't, wait for an event to happen and capture or bubble it or whatever. And they're extremely hard to bootstrap. And again, there is no JavaScript. So this is the XML and HTML rift, which I don't see as, it's horrible. Like, you should be able to process HTML and have a headless browser native to your platform. So markup is good. We all know this. It's by far the most known language. Even non-technical people know what markup is. Even if they don't know, the intricate details of like CSS, they still know what tags do in some fashion. And to prove my point, many people know what this does. So how do we fix this problem? We must be compliant with the W3C. Many platforms make bootstrapping a DOM extremely tedious and painful. We need to fix this. They also don't execute JavaScript. So if you include a script tag, it just treats it like a normal DOM element. So the ideal implementation would actually be scriptable, like a regular browser. You would execute JavaScript in the context of the platform and in the context of the window. So you could, combine both of these worlds and do some pretty amazing stuff. So because Node actually runs in JavaScript, we kind of get some of this for free. And we can do things that other platforms can't even consider because we can execute JavaScript on both sides. So what is JSDOM? About a year ago, I started writing JSDOM as a common JS implementation of the W3C DOM spec. I've kind of limited that down to node specific. There's a lot of intricacies with loading files and all this other stuff that porting it is kind of a pain, and it's not really the primary focus right now. So what is JSDOM? It's parserless, which means there's no parser. I rely on the community to implement these parsers. And it's basically between the parser and the rendering engine. So it would be, as shown up here, it's the parser adapter, which takes markup, sends it to a parser, and then the parser actually creates the DOM for you. Then it's the DOM, which is specified to a T by the W3C. And it's also a small window-like implementation. Right now we have a bunch of stubs, but that will change. Also, something that I should mention is the parsers in red up there. There are 3 of them, and they go in order from fast but very strict to slower, and they deal with more messed up markup. So if you wanted to scrape the World Wide Web, the wild web, you would actually use probably HTML5, the HTML5 parser. But if you're just trying to do XML, you'd probably use Sax. So what makes this great? So the first thing that I did when I was writing JSDOM is I got the test suite from W3C, because it is very important that we are W3C test suite compliant, right? So right now we're really close. 100% of level 1, level 2, and level 3, which is more XML, are passing. Yeah. So JSDOM isn't done until all of these levels are complete, and it's fast, which we have some problems with. But first off, I want to explain what these levels are, because I get a lot of questions about, okay, so what? There's a bunch of levels. What do they do? So level 1 it has this core module, and it basically defines, what a document is, what a node is, what an attribute list is, all of this basic stuff. Level 2 kind of splits. It goes in one direction, XML, so you have namespaces and all of that fun stuff. And then in the other direction, it goes HTML, where you have anchors, form elements, and it also implements or also introduces events. So you can have capture and bubble and all of the things that you're familiar with in the browser. It's also, JSDOM is also extremely easy to bootstrap. As seen here, I mean, for brevity, I've split up the lines, but if you combined all of this, it would be 1 or 3 lines of code, and it's extremely easy to scrape pages or load up your own markup and manipulate it, and it works. One thing to note about this example is that it does not run external JavaScript. So if you have a script tag, it will not fetch and execute that JavaScript. There are other JSDOM methods for that. There's a JSDOM.JSDOM method, and there's also JSDOM.jQueryify, which will allow you to load remote scripts and execute the JavaScript that exists on those pages. So I guess I could explain this. Basically, we require JSDOM.env, or JSDOM. We run env. It goes out to nodejs.org/dist, which is basically a list. Am I? So this dist page is basically a list of links. Hello? 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 Yep. I'm just out now. Yes. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, the /dist page actually is just a list of node releases. Node releases. All right. And when it's done, when it actually fetches the content and parses it and puts it into a DOM, it will call back to the count function, where we have access to a window and a document and everything that you'd expect in a browser, except we're scripting it from the outside. So we can run, window document.get elements by tag name A, which is what this page contains, and then get the length and see how many node releases we've had. It's kind of interesting and very easy. Right here? Okay, I can do that. Okay, so I think it's important that I show what projects are using JSDOM. Closer. Just eat it. Okay, so the majority of projects that are using JSDOM today are screen scrapers. So apparently we love stealing content, which is good, I suppose. I mean, at least people are using this, which was a surprise to me. We also have some people using it for testing. Zombie is great. Toby is also great. Other people use JSDOM to do smoke tests, which is okay. I mean, JSDOM isn't a fully featured browser, so you only get some of the functionality. We have a lot of stubs. It's good. Other people use it for development. These projects are interesting as well. Things like JSPP, which Michael wrote, and I mean, a lot of good stuff in this space. We also have people using it for unobtrusive templating. This, personally, is why I started JSDOM. I hate micro-templating, and I helped Hijinks write Weld, which is up there. So you guys should check it out because it's awesome, and it basically fits the need of... It scratches the itch that I was trying to scratch when I started JSDOM. So other people are trying to use it for code reuse. And if you haven't seen Dave Glass's YUI3 examples, you should check them out because they are quite amazing. He basically takes the same code that or the same DOM that he's rendering on the browser, renders it on the client, and if there's no JavaScript, it doesn't matter. All the links work, like he has some YUI widgets with a calendar, and you should check it out because it's amazing. There's also people doing charting, graphing, so things like HighCharts, Flot, Raphael, which is pretty cool. People like to serve images instead of raw SVG for browsers that don't support it, as well as not giving away like details of the payload. Like they don't want to send, actual financial data across the wire, so they just render an image on the server and then send it as an image to the client. So JSDOM would not be possible without these people, these 46 people, which is quite a few. Whether it's writing a one-line patch or rewriting the entire test infrastructure, JSDOM wouldn't even be it wouldn't even be usable. I mean, there would be no way. I don't have enough time. This is a personal project, and I don't have enough time to do all this. So I really appreciate everybody that's helped out. As a bit of a roadmap, some of the things that we're missing right now are default actions for elements. So say you click on a link, you would expect it to navigate the entire document or the entire window to the new page. That does not work right now. We're also looking into speed improvements, namely live node lists are extremely slow. We have to resort to this crazy machinery to make these work because we don't have proxies. And I think we can solve this problem, but it needs to be looked into. We also need to fix memory leaks. So if you set a timer, like a set interval, when you execute external JavaScript, it will leak. And if you have a ton of DOMs, you'll go over the 1 gig limit, and it will be bad, very bad for everybody. There's also some work that needs to go into the window implementation. Right now we have a lot of stubs. We have enough to make some stuff work, like jQuery and YUI and Prototype, I think MooTools. But there are some other libraries that don't work because we don't have the proper stubs or functionality in place. We also need to test these methods, which is going to be difficult because each browser does a slightly different thing. And I mean, there's no spec, there's no tests out there, so we'll have to write the tests as well. Another thing that's not on the slide, but I just remembered, is that we need to be able to log what's going on in the DOM when you go out and fetch a page. Right now, you can get in these situations where you won't see anything happen. It will just look like, you never get a callback, it doesn't emit an error, it just goes away and it doesn't return you anything. And that needs to be solved immediately. And that is all. Do I have any questions? Questions? Thank you. Of the YUI3 stuff? I don't have any locally. Yeah, you asked if I could show some demos, perhaps with like the YUI3 stuff or other things. I have one. guys read that? Can you read it? No? How about now? All right. It's a little too big. So this is the same example that I was showing before in the slides. The problem is we don't have Wi-Fi, so it won't be able to go out and collect any data. So that's kind of a problem. But I mean, this thing worked. I tried it earlier when I was at the hotel. So there are other examples on the GitHub page, which is tempvar/JSDOM. So if you want to check those out, it might help. Not yet. That is one of the things that I was mentioning with the default actions. So the same thing, sorry. He asked if JSDOM supports the, like form submissions and stuff like that. And the answer is not yet. Yes, so the question is, in regards to executing remote JavaScript, is there potential to basically jump the shark and start executing JavaScript in like Node? And yes, there is. So that is why ENV does not do that. It's meant to be like, easy to use, and there's like really no security risk. In the future, it will, as soon as we can figure out how to do that, whether or not it's spawning off a child process and it's rooting it and going crazy, or if it's, finding a better way to sandbox it in Node itself. Okay, so the question is, with all of the browser stuff not being exactly like the DOM stuff, is the goal to split them apart or just to expand JSDOM? I think it would actually be optimal to split it out, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we need once we have a working implementation, then we can split it out to another library, have its own tests, and maybe even go as far as to provide different implementations so it emulates IE or Firefox or whatever, and then add that as a dependency to JSDOM. I think for right now it will all be one library, but eventually it will probably be split out. No. And the question was, did this come out of work with readability? So the question was, how important is the speed of the DOM when you're using many DOMs on the server? It's very important. In fact, it's more important than it is on the browser. In the browser, people expect, the DOM to take a little bit of time, but on the server, it's important that we get responses back immediately, especially since the DOM is blocking. We want results as soon as possible, which means you have to spawn up more processes to handle more requests. So the faster the DOM is, the more requests we can handle with a single process, right? Does that answer the question? So what am I doing to improve the speed? So we have a kludgy implementation of live node lists, which it's very slow. We have to recalculate a lot of things. Basically, we're crawling the DOM back and forth, and it's extremely slow. And I think once we fix that, it will be much faster. Thank you.